The doctors and my mum knew that something wasn't right. Without this, I would be dead.
Cystic fibrosis is one of the most common genetic illnesses. It is a recessive order that affects around 1 in 2,500 babies born each year. It is estimated that there are over 9,000 people currently living with the illness, and it can only be inherited if both parents are carriers. I met Charlotte, a healthy-looking 21-year-old, but in fact she was lucky to still be talking to me at all. From her childhood, King's College Hospital London and Harefield Hospital became her second home. In 2011, she almost lost her own battle.
I was about 3 years old when I caught a well-known infection called Pseudomonas. This required that I had intravenous antibiotics through my veins to help try and get rid of the bug. That never really worked, and I've always had that bug within inside me. It was kept at bay with all the medications through my life. So I started secondary school as a normal teenager. Health-wise, I wasn't a healthy, well CFer, but I was stable and I was able to do things that I wanted to do, like go to guide camp and still attend secondary school.
Aged 16, Charlotte coughed and felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. Eager not to return to the hospital from which she had just left, she ignored it. 2 weeks later, she was admitted to intensive care. Her lung collapsed a second time, and surgery was deemed the safest option to ensure that it was fixed long term.
My physical fitness and health had declined dramatically, that I struggled to do things like washing my own hair or walking up the stairs. At this point, my London CF team decided that I needed to have the transplant. For me, this was an absolute terrible, terrible thought, as I was only 16. There was nothing more that they could do, and only one thing that was going to happen, and that would be that I would have died.
Charlotte battled to put on weight so she could undergo her double lung transplant. On December 23, 2010, that dream was realised, and she was put on the active list. For the next 10 months, her mum became her support as she grew increasingly weaker, ending up on 24-hour oxygen and wheelchair-bound outside the house. Luckily for her, her call came at 1:15 in the morning on the 17th of October 2011.
Yeah, so we went up to Harefield and I waited over 12 hours to actually be told that it was finally going ahead. Now this was my one and only call, which is quite rare for most people because most people get false calls. So we kind of expected this would be a dry run and that I'd be back home for dinner. It wasn't the case, I was actually in surgery. So I went down surgery, I had my little Teddy in tow because he's my little operation bear who comes to me with everything. It was such a terrifying thought that knowing that as they were putting you to sleep, knowing it could be your last breath it's so fearful, and that's one thing that you kind of think, actually, am I doing the right thing?
After 8.5 hours in surgery, Charlotte had survived. She wasn't out of the woods yet, but initial signs looked good, and her mum was able to visit the same evening. Surgeons said that the new lungs looked amazing, but it was their life expectancy that was most shocking. She was told that without her transplant, she probably would not have seen that Christmas.
So I was sitting up as my mum came in, and then the first thing I said was, "Oh, I've seen my lungs and they're pink." I'm now at university, absolutely loving life. I can now finally do things that people my age are doing. You know, I've got a job, I've just made a whole load of new friends, I've moved out from home. It's just absolutely amazing, and I wouldn't be alive today if my organ donor hadn't signed up and said yes to wanting to be an organ donor.